Five, five, four, three, two, one. I guess we're live now.
You are live.
We are live. Yeah, I'm almost wondering, like we talked about this earlier about music, like something that da da da, kind of just give us, rather than this. To me, it's just this quick little awkward. Oh, by the way, we're live.
Well, then we'll have to come up with the music, Rick.
Yes, yes.
Right?
Now, yeah. Does it? Yeah, and this is what I liked about the way we organically grew this little project of ours is it was very in the moment, right? It was so in
Yeah.
the moment. Like, like you said, we should be recording this. And I go, yeah, we should. Let's do it next week. Yeah, let's do it next week.
Yeah. And also the organic lighting, I should say, is really another organic aspect of this.
Okay, so it's not a spray tan. Is this what you're saying?
I'm still a little red today. I don't know. There's something
Well, I'm
about this
pale.
time.
I'm pale, so I'm just yeah.
Yeah, it makes
I
me
know.
look very tan.
Well, it's a learning curve, right? And I think this should be a testament to anybody that wants to try something new. You don't have to get it right. You don't have to get all your ducks
Yeah.
in a row. Just do it, right? And let everything else kind of sort it out, right? It's like, do we or do we not have music in the beginning? I don't know. I don't know. We'll probably try something next week if we have time.
I mean, chances are that even when you think that you have all your ducks in a row, you don't. So you
No.
discover things that are not in a row as you
Yeah.
do it, right? So you
Yeah.
might as well just drop all the thinking, drop all the, rehearsing and the what ifs, because that stuff is the stuff that keeps you stuck, right? Often that's exactly where it ends because we get
Yeah.
stuck in the what ifs
Yeah.
and all the things that could go wrong.
Yeah.
And then we don't do it at all, right? So we have
No.
no ducks in a row,
No. No.
right?
And then you get people come up to you, hey, whatever happened to that idea you had? It's like, ugh.
Uh, Only if you knew. Those lights, none of them worked.
So that big investment, like, so have you are you using a ring light at all or anything, or you got something?
I'm using two different types of light,
Okay.
natural light. And then, really, natural light is my enemy because as soon
Oh,
as it changes, the lighting
right.
changes.
Yes. 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 Yeah.
So, but
And
it's
because you're,
okay.
yeah.
It's a fun part of this conversation to just go looking one way, just like you and your beard. I'm seeing that you are looking more and more like your old self.
My old self. Oh, there we go. Yes, yes. Yeah, well, actually, you changed that because just before we came on air, you had said something to the effect, "Well, you're starting to look normal again."
Did I say normal or did I say
Yeah, you
yourself?
said
I
normal, and
said
I said,
normal.
"Yeah." And you're going, "Okay, well," because that came up at a coaching the room I with heartfelt presence. I volunteer coaching on Tuesday evenings, and that subject came up in our little group discussion about like what really is normal, what
Mhm.
constitutes normal, right? Who gets to say what is normal?
I
Kind of a thing.
mean, the word normal is just a label, right? So
Absolutely.
we pulled out a label and then gave it meaning.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just that meaning is not necessarily super defined. It's just what
Well,
we
and it's
consider to
very
be
and it's limiting too, like all labels.
very.
Yeah. Like, and as soon as and there's actually a really good book. I forget the book, but I know there's a TED talk that I enjoyed. It's really funny. It's by Sean Acorn, and he talks about right in the very beginning. He talks about these graphs that people love to do. When they're trying to, look at what average is, or what normal is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you get these line graphs, kind of a thing, and then you get these little dots that go outside the line, and those are called the outliers.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of studying, and what they normally do, statisticians do, is they eliminate the outliers because they think there's something wrong with the data or whatever, or they didn't get the question properly or something along those lines. So they kind of eliminate them because they're more interested in what the average is, right? So they can measure
Mm,
that. Well, his challenge is that we should throw that away and start looking at the outliers. Like what makes them so different from the average?
mm-hmm,
And there's probably something there that we all could benefit from.
mm-hmm,
Because, when I start to look like, we often, go with the stat around, like 5% of the people do this and 1% do this. And I think it's those 1%ers or 5%ers that are really truly the outliers. Like they're the Elon Musks, they're the Richard Branstons, they're the ones that aren't aren't in that normal, right? And I think they feel, I don't know, I haven't talked to them. Maybe we can get them on our show. Hey, that would be kind of cool.
ah, there you go. Put it out there in the universe. I'm working on it.
No, totally. And I would really ask them like how, like, everybody else judges their life, but I'm curious how they judge their life on a scale of like how do they feel is what normal is for them.
Hmm. Well, what is not normal? I mean, normal, what we consider normal is the conditioning.
Yes.
That's what normal is. What we were conditioned to think that is normal.
Yes.
And I think depending on the conditioning and on the person, that a normal can be very narrow or a little bit broader, but it's still defined by walls,
Yes.
outside of which almost it feels wrong to go
Yes.
out of, right?
Yeah. Well, it's a comfort. I call it's almost your comfort zone at that point.
I mean, and that's such a just understood concept that not being normal is not good, right? Because there's really no rule that says that not being normal is not a good thing,
Well,
right? We're just
yeah.
conditioned to believe,
Yeah.
just relate to it in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where I kind of, get into my pedestal or my what do they call that, soapbox. The
Mm-hmm.
soapboxes they used to put in
Mm-hmm.
in the square and everybody would stand up. But
Mm-hmm.
is the whole issue of labels is, like, we love to label things because it creates separation. And I got this. um I had a really interesting funny week. I know you asked me about that this week, just before we came on. And like tell you how funny it is in the sense of like I'm on my hike and I'm looking at trees and I go, hmm, like there are a variety of different trees, but we kind of call them trees, right? And then somewhere
Mm-hmm.
along the line, somebody had this idea, well, we can't just call them everything trees, right? There are differences. So let's start labeling these differences, based on characteristics, whatever, that kind of stuff, right? So now we can tell the difference between a willow tree and an oak tree and a fir tree, right? Because if I just say go to the trees, you know, okay, kind of a thing. But we also carried that into, um, Carl Jung really basically started this, in more modern times, but the introverted, the extroverted, the feeler,
Mm-hmm.
the thinker, um, and well, it's really good for a tree because you don't see too many lemon trees trying to be orange trees.
Right.
It's like, you know, but you see a lot of people not trying to be themselves,
Mm-hmm.
thinking that there's something wrong with themselves or they're not meeting the norms, or there's, that whole problem with comparison, right? You don't see a lemon tree comparing to an orange tree saying, oh, the orange tree's got a much better life than I do. you know um I'm tired of people always making a funny face out of my fruit, right? 'Cause
Well, I mean, it's the ultimate struggle for a lot of people not feeling good about themselves. I mean, that's where all that comes from, right? Wanting to be like somebody else. There's like deep insecurities there that need to be looked at, and like just it would be interesting to actually dive deep into why that is that we're so not connected to ourselves, and we feel like everything outside of ourselves is better than what we already have in here, right?
Yeah, it's yeah, but it's all part of conditioning. For me,
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
know, there's something that we picked up somewhere along the line that said we're lacking something, right?
Hmm.
And we're constantly looking outside of ourselves for whatever we feel is missing within us, not realizing the very thing that we're looking for has already been inside us all this time,
Hmm.
right? And um, yeah, it's and when you realize that, and there's a sense of that. I think intuitively we get it, like intellectually. People will often, like in a coaching conversation, people will say, "Yeah, I get it, I get it," but they don't actually have a realization around that. You know,
It takes time. Yeah, it's something that takes time because it's not just realizing all of this. It's also once you open your eyes to that, right? You really see yourself and you see where the problem, where the insecurities are, and like start questioning why is it that I don't feel good about what I already am, you
hmm
know, then you are faced with another question, right? Now that you see yourself as something different, because that's seeing ourselves as something different, well, who are you?
yeah,
Get to know yourself, right? And now the work starts, right? There's a lot of work that just like unravels from there because it's not just that we don't realize that we are who we've been always looking for, it's also that we don't really truly know ourselves.
no, and that's the fun. For me, it's always been a fun exploration, and I've been at this
Hmm.
exploration for almost 40 years, right? When I first had this kind of realization that I wasn't who I thought I was, in the sense
Hmm.
of, my identity was so much tied to things outside of myself.
Hmm.
And when I had that realization that through the gift of thought, that I could create just about anything I want, like through me. I'm not talking about material things or anything like that. um I could be that person, and from being that person I could have and do. I was always working my life backwards. I was looking
Hmm.
for things that, okay, if I could do better, I would feel better, or if I did this, that would be a cool job, and everything else would change along with it. Or if I had that, I would feel more happier. If I had a better relationship, all those different things. Realizing that I was creating everything around that, and I also had the power of changing that. So it had
Hmm.
nothing to do with me flipping jobs or changing relationships or doing whatever, that kind of thing. Everything I had, everything I was given, is right in front of me. And when I dropped all that, I started to become something more, and everything else just seemed to fall into place.
Yeah, I mean, we are that way because of the same thing, right? The conditioning, what's been modeled for us from our parents and what their conditioning
Sure.
was. So we were not woke to the fact that, we are the person that's, witnessing our
Yep.
lives.
Yep.
Then we have learned to just go and achieve and do to feel,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Robots.
Um, yeah, a little
Yeah.
bit, right? So
Yeah.
when you wake up to it is quite fascinating. And then you also realize that really you are so not who you thought you were because you're able to change that person. The
Yeah.
only thing that remains the same is the observer on the inside. The observer that now can, step into the observer's position and look back and see who you truly are.
Oh, I
That's the
love that.
only way that you can see that, right? From the observer's position, because for as long as you live this experience through this, from the inside out, you're not able to get that perspective.
No, no, one of the first sort of exercises I have done in workshops is sort of this I am work, um, exercise, which is basically, you know, listing all the different labels that you have.
Mm.
I am a father, I am a son, I am a paramedic, I am all these different things, right? I am an introvert, I am, all the labels. And it's amazing the list that you can, right? Because a lot of it is eh, you know we're identified so much with so many
Hmm.
things, particularly with what we do.
Oh
And
yeah.
you know and when you start, so after you make the list, then you go back into the list and you start asking the question, okay, would you still be you if you weren't a paramedic?
Mm.
Well, yeah, yeah, okay. Would you still be you if you suddenly weren't an introvert? Well, yeah. And you start to realize that all these labels were just descriptions,
Hmm.
and they they didn't necessarily have to define you unless you chose to have them define you, right? They were just labels. And then when you got rid of every single label, you came down to exactly what you were talking about, like, who really are you? You are that who's labeling. You're kind of like you're behind the
Or has been labeled.
well, we also call that like we try and put an identification onto that too. But like in the book of Tao, there there's that point where what's behind the thought can't be named, because as soon as
Mm.
you name it, it it's not that kind of a thing, right? So it's exciting and weird to be all part of that.
Mm.
Yeah.
I mean, it's useful, right? Language is useful, labeling is useful. It conveys so many different concepts within one word, right? If you
Yeah.
had to describe a willow tree, it would take quite some time. The problem is that we identify with it. That's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a huge one in the sense, and because you hear so many, it becomes almost like a limiting excuse, right? Well, I'd love to do public speaking, but I'm too shy, or I'm
Hmm.
an
Oh
introvert,
yeah.
right? And it's like, oh, okay. If you drop that, if you weren't an introvert, could you do public speaking? Well, yeah, but I'm an introvert. It's just like,
It's
okay,
those saboteurs, right? They keep
totally.
us there.
Yeah. So it's yeah, it's fun to sort of, really delve into that and listen to the language that people are speaking. Like when you're out in the environment there, you can hear the limiting conversations people have with themselves. They might be having them with other people, but they're really being directed back into that ecosystem, basically validating everything they think they are or who they think they are, right? So it's a fun game. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
we love to feel like our old selves, right? Just
yes.
remind ourselves of what we know and who's familiar, which is why change is so tough, right? Change can be a fight against yourself. Change is always a fight against yourself. I would dare to say, actually.
Well, if everything's about us, like when you think about
Hmm.
it, like every struggle is all about us. It's not about other people. It's always centered on
We're
us.
creating it all.
That's right.
We're very busy. I
We're
mean,
very
it's so
busy.
true, though. So true. Like to change, you have to rebel against yourself because the thing that keeps you in the place that you're not feeling well in is you, right? So
Yeah.
it's all a little bit of an inner fight with me, myself, and I.
Yeah, and you're fighting yourself, exactly. Like you're
Yeah.
like like who's listening to this stuff, right? Like, right, you get this little internal dialogue going on, and all of a sudden you realize, like, who the heck is listening to that? Like, I'm hearing it, right? But we're so conditioned that almost relates to that's our normalcy.
Hmm. Yeah, we don't
And
hear it, right? We
yeah,
almost don't notice it until we
no,
notice it.
we don't. we don't. As a matter of fact, I was thinking about, and I know I often use the phrase about, the art of navigating life, kind of a thing. And I was thinking about this on the drive up, before we started. Like, I don't consciously think about driving,
That's true. Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't consciously think. I've got the skills, and I learned it, right? But everything is so subtle.
Hmm.
Like I'm adjusting, the wheel here and there. Sometimes there's a bump, kind of a thing, and it's like, oh, there's a bump, kind of a, you know. And I was thinking, it's like driving, and I've heard this metaphor used quite a few times, but I mean, it is such a perfect metaphor for how we sort of navigate through life, in the sense of there's so much of what we do is unconscious.
So true. Especially those times that you're like, how did I get from home to like all the way to pick up my kids? I don't remember the way there. And it's a little scary when you think about
Well,
it, right?
especially where you are, because in Brooklyn, there's a lot more traffic than I have in
Oh
Virginia.
yeah, it's dangerous over here. It's a jungle. It really is. But it's like, I mean, and that's what scares me. I'm like, how did I go through all these lights and stop and knew like when to like go again
Yeah,
when I don't feel like I ever even saw the traffic light or
yeah,
noticed where I was driving through. It's
yeah,
kind of a wild concept.
yeah.
But it's a very, very good metaphor. I completely agree with you. We do so many things like that. We just go with it, and we don't even know what we're going with.
No, and we take a lot of it for granted as being, it's just part of life, kind of a thing, right?
Hmm.
Until something happens, and then it's like, oh, what was that all about? I wasn't expecting that. What do you mean I got a flat tire? I don't know how to fit a, fix a flat tire. Now I'm doomed. I'm down the side of the road. What am I going to do? What is, like you get wrapped up in some kind of circumstances, right? And that's what kind of throws us for a big loop. Like, there's a big hiccup there, and it's a bit of awakening. But
Yeah.
when I find, when we sort of relax a little bit and actually see what we really have in front of us, a flat tire, we don't have a crisis, we just have a flat tire, right? That things start to come into place, where it's sort of like, oh, I heard something about a jack, or a spare, or something along those.
But how about triple A?
Or for
That's
those,
the first thing that comes to my mind. No jacks for me. Thank you.
no jacks, no. But you were prepared for that, right?
I would be. I mean, yeah, I think I would call someone in that case.
Yeah,
But jokes aside, we tend to live everything as if it was a big emergency, and that's why we can't really. We have all these like crazy thoughts going through our heads as the first thing that happens, right? Well, because it's almost like a computer that's trying to like settle down. Like, wait, what happened? What should I do now? Like the moment that you break the routine of what you expected to happen, your brain goes in tilt for a second, and that's the way I see fight or flight a little bit, right? Even like a milder form of it, like your computer's spinning for a second, right? So you have all this stuff running, and you don't know what to pay attention to. And the moment that you just accepted that you're
mm,
no longer, you have a flat tire, you're no longer driving straight and not paying attention to
yeah,
where you're going, right? Then you can now assess the situation and, use your prefrontal cortex,
yeah.
frankly, right? Because that's what happens. It goes offline a little bit.
And I think for me, it's always been that kind of a of a goal where, you know, going back to the driving metaphor, where even the flat tires just become a minor adjustment, as opposed
Hmm.
to something that's going to sideline me for hours or days sometimes, right? It's just like, oh, it's just a minor adjustment, it's just a minor hookup, right? Or it's just a minor whatever. It's like, oh, look, I need fuel, look, I need oil, look, kind of a thing. It's just all part of, like, if we looked at it as just a part of living, as a and it's and it's totally normal and common and everything else, maybe we'd get a lot longer, further along our journeys, kind of a thing, right? I don't know. I don't know. I'm, we've got some people on the lines, and they're more than welcome to make comments or ask questions too. But how do you see it, Fati?
I mean, I think it's the concept of letting go, right? It's
Oh,
the
there's that word
concept
again.
of letting go. And, really understanding that today we live in this, we don't have when we have a flat tire, it feels like a massive crash, right?
Mm,
Everything is like amplified in the direction of like anxiety and alarm bells going off. So, I think there's a lot that can be said to that we're not really able to, and what that is, going back to your metaphor, is really like an expectation that's not being met. We expect it to go straight, but something
oh yeah,
happened,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, and if and letting go is the concept of letting go is letting go of any expectations, letting go of any control, letting go of anything being in any way, shape, or form the way you decided it's going to be, right, in that moment. And accepting that, while you can put an address on that GPS, you may not fully have control over the exact route there, right? So
No, and letting go of that control can be
tough,
challenging. Yeah,
can
I
be
mean, because
very
I'm
tough.
used to being in control.
Oh yeah, of course we love to be in control, right? I love to know what my lights are going to do. I love this relationship with my lights that I have. No, but yeah, we do love to be in control, right? I mean, there's a difference between deciding what you want and why it is that you want something, and trying to control every bit of it, right? And like the need to control really comes from insecurities, right? Because that makes us feel safe. If I can control it, I'll feel safe.
Yeah.
And letting go is not simple. But I was actually telling you right before we got on here that I started this book, Let Go. I think it's called Let Go or Let It Go. Let me look it up because I don't want to give you the wrong. Yeah, Letting Go, from David Hopkins. uh, and I started it yesterday, and I'm like, I literally wanted to, like, I re-listened to every single chapter since, like, at least twice, because
Mm,
the way he explains the concept of letting go and surrendering is
yeah.
just so clear, because he's a psychiatrist, so he really speaks of even the way it affects the mind and why it's so important on that level, to be
Hmm.
able to just focus on what's present and what's in front of you,
Yes.
rather than all these expectations and decisions that you have made in regards to a specific thing.
Yeah.
But I'll read it a little bit more and then we can talk about it. It's a pretty
Okay.
good book. I'm really enjoying it.
Well, even just the short description of what you just said right now points to so much of what we've been talking about for quite a long time, prior to our little show here, is how important it is to stay present, to be present,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that, for me, that's part of that driving piece, is knowing, you know, it the sweet spot's in the middle of the road. It's not in the shoulder, and it's not in the lane that's coming forward, right? So it's sort of like the left lane is the future, right? It's everything coming to you, right? And the shoulder is everything that is your
I
past.
like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that.
So and yeah, it just sort of occurred to me, because it's sort of like, to me it's very visual, kind of.
Yeah, I love that. That's such a good, yeah, I love this visual. It's so
Yeah.
good.
So
Yeah.
so the sweet spot is really in the middle. Like that's where you get the most fuel efficiency, and it's less bumpier,
I
and
mean, and also, so let's just speak to it. What is it? What is letting go and surrender, right? What happens when you're more present? What happens when you're more present? You notice more of
yeah,
where you are and what you're experiencing in that moment.
yeah,
And when you're able to surrender, you're also able to be more present in your life, right? And the moment that you're more present, you start noticing coincidences, right? There's another amazing book, Synchrodestiny by Deepak Chopra, that speaks to
Yes.
this concept, right?
Yeah.
It's not that those signs and those synchronicities weren't happening in your life before, it's just that you weren't seeing them,
Yeah.
right? And why is it important to see that? Because the moment that you see them, you know exactly what it is that you need to do, because those are intuitive signs and, energetic. It's an energetic dialogue with the universe, I would say, right?
Yeah.
When you really start paying attention to your life, you're really able to connect the dots and like translate what it's telling you, right? Whether you need to redirect or keep going where you are, after a while that you understand this concept and so you start living by it, you also start learning how to get those clues and run with them,
Yeah.
right?
And those clues don't come from your past, and they don't come from the future, because they're both, well, one's memory and one's an illusion, right? It's not happened. There's nothing real about that. um, and yeah, it's funny, like the book I'm reading, I just kind of finishing up with it, is called Godwinks,
Mhm.
which is a very similar concept about, you know, and what he does in his book is he gets you to reflect back on all the different winking moments, like, like the synchronicity, the coincidences, right,
Yeah.
that happened in your past that got you here today. Like when you reflect back on it, it's like, oh yeah, that was kind of, it almost felt like an intervention. I almost felt like, something was guiding me, right? And we can recognize some of those, right? So the whole idea
Mhm.
is, again, like what you're pointing to, is you, you can't see it unless you're in the sweet spot, unless you're in the present moment.
Mhm.
And so part of navigating in life is knowing when, it's like, oh, I'm in the shoulder, got to get in the middle. Oh, getting too close to so it's not that we can't avoid it. For me, I can't avoid it. It's, there, it just happens. Like all of a sudden I'll be thinking in my past, something will come up. Like I didn't ask for that. It just comes up. But to recognize where I am, and surrender or let go, or however you want to call it, puts me back into the sweet spot. And then, yeah, oh, I might be drifting over here, or I might be drifting over there. It's kind of constant, right? And I think just like driving, you kind of get a feel for it after a while, and it's so much easier to let go. It's like, oh, there I am again, there I go again, kind of thing. And then you just keep naturally coming back. So it becomes more of a, rather than, oh my goodness, kind of a
Mhm.
deal. It's like in Brooklyn, that's all you
Oh
guys do.
yeah.
You're driving your
Yeah.
Ferrari all over town there, right? But I know you don't have a Ferrari,
No,
okay?
I don't. I mean, hopefully one day
Maybe, right? But it becomes more
when I
subtle.
get my lighting right.
Oh yeah, first your lighting, get that lighting fixed, and then we'll work on the
And my
Ferrari.
tan,
Yeah,
skin
I mean,
tone.
it's better than pale. I mean, I kind of got this pale look kind of.
I
I
mean,
want to sit in
it's.
front of
I don't
brush.
understand this lights. Sorry, I had to sometimes.
Oh,
But
oh,
it's so true. I mean, this book also speaks to, yeah, I really love it. I started it today. I'm so excited about it because he speaks to the science behind, like creating your reality you know, through your thoughts, because thoughts create
yep,
emotions and emotions affect, energy, and
that's right.
energy creates things, right?
Yeah,
And yeah, I just really love the way he explains all these concepts and speaks to,
yeah.
like also the health benefits of surrendering. Why it's so beneficial? Because
Oh,
when you are not able to, when you don't surrender something, what you're doing is you're creating emotions and feelings about it. And then those feelings and emotions that remain unprocessed and get stored in your body, and stored and processed emotions can create disease. So yeah, it's a really good read. It's
oh,
a slightly different perspective on it
yep,
than like Deepak Chopra, for instance. And
yep.
actually, I think he speaks to that as well. But it's the way he explains all this stuff is fascinating. So,
Well, most of well, as you know, my library is predominantly inside out related. um, but it is refreshing. I love listening and or reading. I do a lot of audiobooks now. I just
mhm,
find it more
me too.
convenient,
Yeah, me too.
and and it's it's just they're kind of saying the same things, but they're saying it in a different way that sometimes really resonates with you at the
Through
moment.
their filter, through the way they understood it. And
Yeah,
like we all understand things through our own filter, which is
yeah.
why we can never have enough people talking about this stuff,
No, no, you can
right?
never.
The scarcity mentality that we're all preaching the same thing. We're all, well, you know what? If this has been preached before,
Yeah,
it should be really, really effective on all the population of the world. And if it's not, it's because there's a big part of the population that cannot hear it the way you're explaining it. It's true. It's
absolutely.
language. It's NLP as well, right?
Yeah.
Language is super powerful, and language is a very subjective thing. The way we interpret things, the way we see the
Oh,
world, the way we
oh,
perceive things, the tone, the way, the person who's speaking, the what's attached to, emotionally to all of that, what's the history behind it.
yeah.
I mean, language can really trigger so many different things, and it's almost like it's universal, but it's really not, because we all take it and create our own story with it, right?
Eight 8,000 8 billion different perceptions, right?
Yeah.
And experiences and expressions of that oneness, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
8 billion different, but even like and language is vital, particularly in a coaching environment, right? Because
Vital.
for me,
Yeah.
like even saying the words letting go, right? So is brings up different types of thought around that. Like, some people look at it as a sign of weakness,
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, so it's vitally important for me to stay curious around, rather than just sort of bloating out the word. Well, you need to let go, and they're going, well, I don't know, but it's like, okay, well, help me understand what letting go means to you, though,
Yeah, I
right?
mean, it's definitely not a concept that you approach with a client in the first few sessions.
Probably not, but
That's what I would say.
even like when somebody would say to me, like, I've been really sad or depressed lately, right? And I'll say, okay, well,
Hmm.
I know what depressed is for me, but I have no idea what depressed means for them. And so being
Hmm.
curious around that word, right? Because it is a label, right? And I can look it up, in the DCM manual, or I can look it up on the internet or Google it, whatever, and I can get a really clinical definition of what that means. But I don't know what the experience is of that individual with it.
Hmm.
And so that becomes important, right? And again, it's the same thing. Like anytime I introduce a term, I need to get really clear on, do you really understand? Like one I've been I was working with a client on Sunday, was playing with the difference between what a reaction is and a response is.
Hmm.
Because some people get the mixed up and think they're actually the same thing.
The reaction is the response for some people.
Exactly. Well, exactly,
Yeah.
right. It's like,
I
so,
mean, me included.
yeah, well, yeah, me too. Like I get plugged into that kind of thing, and
Hmm.
I get a very immediate reaction, right?
Hmm.
And so from a coaching perspective, I really like to sort of like define it so that we have a common language. When I say reaction, I'm talking about the things that are coming from the left brain, the ego, kind of like, you say this, I react to that. A very very poignant,
With the
thing.
defensiveness, right?
Well,
You're
all
fight or
that kind of
flight again,
fight or
right?
flight. uh there's a very, almost a physical, expression of that kind of a thing. There's a tightness, all these kind of things that come up with being reactive. And even, we have nuclear reactors,
Hmm.
right? So it's atoms smashing up against things, right? So we don't have nuclear responders.
No,
Kind of
one
like
is definitely a lot more active than the other.
yeah.
Well,
And then I asked him,
aggressive, I would say,
yeah,
actually.
yeah. And so I said, that's why we have first responders. We don't have first reactors.
Yeah, that would
You
not be
know?
good.
Yeah. So it's about, so what is the subtle difference? For me, a response is something that has a bit of on its own time, right? It's sort of like,
Hmm.
okay, we're going to take a pause for a moment, and we'll respond accordingly as opposed to reacting to what might not be true. So there's a bit of
Hmm.
a a pause where you can sort of reflect a little bit. Is what I see true or not true, right? Am I a threat or I'm not a threat? So there you can actually have a more of um, a true response to in real time to what is happening in front of you. and
Hmm.
and we teach that as paramedics. We teach them to slow down. Like, you don't go rushing into scenes, and you slow down. You see things as as the scene is evolving, so you're responding accordingly to what's happening in front of you, as opposed to, oh my goodness, there's trauma here, kind of a thing, right? So yeah, there labels, language, it helps even in common uh, conversations with your spouse or loved ones, and even kids. What I think is a word that I'm defining may not be the same thing for them.
Definitely not for kids. My daughter thought I was talking about Elsa, so and I
Oh,
told her, "Let it go, Blake." She's like, "You know, I don't like Elsa." I'm like, what?
what do you mean I'm not? Yeah, but that, but
Yeah,
and that's such a great song too, right? It's like,
it is. It is. I mean, I kind of love when there's like things like that put into like cartoons and stuff for
oh
kids for a little more,
yeah,
educational in the sense that I believe everyone should be educated. So it's good.
yeah.
There's some progress in humanity.
Oh, I mean, every Disney, if you can't get a message out of some of the Disney movies, like even I watched Soul for the first time. I don't know if you've seen that one.
Mm-mm, I don't think so.
Yeah, very, very. No spoiler alerts here.
Okay.
Um, but it had for me, it had kind of a mic drop moment at the very end.
Okay, I'm gonna
Very
have
end.
to watch it.
Yeah, yeah. No, it was cool. It was cool. Yeah. Okay, we'll talk about that next time.
We
Whatever.
won't talk about Disney anymore.
No, 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 no. And that's well, I mean, this is so unscripted. Um,
So what else happened? You said you had quite a big week.
well, it was 7 days long.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think mine was too.
Yeah, yeah. But it's no, I had just been like, I just finished this course with a coach and mentor, Michael Neal, on living a guided life.
Mm,
And it was so much about hitting the sweet spot on the road, like, like just that whole piece of, and listening to the God winks, or intuition, or wisdom, or the inner GPS, whatever you want to call it, um, more consistently. And the
mm.
only way that you can do it is being present. So the minute I
Going back there.
going back there, right?
Yeah.
And it was about, like, it's like every time, um, it takes a little bit of a practice, I guess. But like when I noticed, it's like, where am I right now? Oh, I'm just kind of wallowing in my present. And it's like, how do I know? Well, I'm not feeling really good about that. And then, or geez, I'm feeling really overwhelmed. That one I can get into really quickly, because it's a really, um, a feeling, a strong feeling with me. Like I can pick
It's
up.
in your body, right? I feel like when I
Oh, yeah,
feel it in my
so,
body.
yeah. And then
Yeah.
right away, as soon as I get that feeling, right away I go, okay, I need to slow down. I need to way slow it down because I'm thinking way too far ahead right now. And I'm way out of the zone. So I need to step back, slow down a little bit, and just go, okay, what is the most important thing right now at this moment? What is the most important thing, right? And and it's amazing how it will come, and it's exactly what needs to be done, and and then the next thing shows up, and you know, I'm in I'm in awe how much I can actually get done in such a short period of time. Because I used to have this old thing about time, like I can't do all this in one. I've only got an hour left, right? And it's like, well, relax. We'll just see what happens.
Hmm. Yeah.
Right? And I think that's part of the practice. That's part of the and Michael Neal. I'm kind of repeating what because he talks about this art. And there's another really good book called the Artist Way, which is sort of the same kind of concept. It's just finding that flow where you're just sort of like,
Like the other thing that came up for me as you were talking about, feeling it, right? It's, I think often, I mean, obviously, this is what we do and we talk about this stuff all day long. We notice it in others, we help others, like we wire their thinking. So we're pretty good at noticing, right?
yeah,
But for like the regular person that doesn't do this, that doesn't even know or just discovered, oh, a lot of my thinking, 99% of my thinking is not really serving me. It's disempowering. It can be daunting to just know how to catch that, right? Because it's such an automated thing that happens. It just happens,
yeah,
right? You're not really in control of it. So, going back to feeling it in your body, I think that is where your signal is. That's your signal. The moment that you don't feel good, you feel that, pressure in your chest or heat in your body, or you just don't feel good in your body, that's your clue. That's your signal right there.
yeah,
Stop and look at what you're thinking. Just really notice what is it that you're thinking.
yeah.
The moment that you notice what you're thinking, then now you can start taking charge of
That's when you
starting to change that behavior. It takes
yeah,
time. You don't rewire your thinking just because it's there and it's happening that
well,
moment.
it's
It takes
habitual.
redirection.
Yeah,
Yeah, constant
yeah.
redirection.
One thought at a time.
One thought at a time. And that's the thing, because I had a client tell me, like, well, if I have to do this one thought at a time, it's going to take me forever. I'm like, well, initially maybe one thought at a time, then your brain gets trained to just catch yourself and redirect all thoughts that are like that, right? It
Absolutely.
eventually does become faster, and you're always going to have these negative thoughts, and don't judge it, because the
Don't
moment that
judge.
you judge it, now you're creating more negative thinking.
Yeah,
Like, just don't judge it, acknowledge it, and move on. Just redirect the thinking, right?
yeah. And
So
and, and that well, you're leading back up to that uh, quote from Sid Banks, um, who basically said, if we alone were never afraid of our experiences in life, that alone would change the world. In other words, you know, not being afraid of our feelings, not being afraid of our experiences, and honoring the experience for what it is, a experience of life. We're the ones that make it good or bad or whatever, kind of a thing based on
mhm,
our thinking. But if it's just an experience, then great, bring on the next one,
mhm,
right?
yeah.
So like we don't have to get so whelped up in it. Well, I'm feeling sad right now. Okay, great, you're feeling sad. You don't have to do anything about it. It's just a feeling, right? And
Well,
that's where we get
feeling
back
it,
into this.
well,
Well, it's not normal. Well, okay, so what is normal?
well, that's because they're judging it.
Yes, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah. I mean, it's a I don't know how you want to like it's a dance. It's a you know there's an art to it. You get a feel
There's
for
an
it.
art to it. And it
Hmm?
turns out that even when you do figure this part out, There's a lot more to figure out.
Well, and you're right. I mean, that's the other thing. Like, like we started off this broadcast, right? With basically saying, like, you can't wait to get it right to keep going. Like, you can't. You have to try stuff out. And this is what we did, right? We just, we had this thought. It's like we should be recording these, because we've had these conversations for almost a year now, right?
More
And
than a year.
is it been more than a year? Oh, okay.
You said the same thing on episode 1, by the way.
Okay.
Should I be concerned?
Oh, you be concerned. Hey, I live in the moment. I live in the moment. Okay, I'm not living in my memory.
Clearly.
I tell you, some guy, I've had a client come up to me and says, what you said to me was really, I've been thinking about it for all night, kind of thing. And I go, you have to remind me, what did I say to you? It's in the moment, right? It's so much in the moment. So, okay, I'm repeating myself.
Because you don't remember what you just said.
I don't
So
remember.
that may not have anything to do with being present. I'm just saying.
No, okay. Yes. Well, there's some really good. I only have to buy one book or one movie, and I get to
And you can just use it over and over and over again.
But like, as try stuff out. Like, you'll never get it perfect. You'll never get it right. You'll never get your ducks in a row. It's really about experiencing, experimenting, exploring.
And also, you're never done. And that's another thing. You're never done evolving, because the moment that you have uncovered and worked on one part of you, the next thing reveals itself. You're like, oh, what was that? Well, that was hiding behind all the other 10 things you just tackled, And the sooner you release the expectation to be done with self-development, working on yourself, like thinking that you're at some point, someday going to be this perfect human that has no flaws, the sooner you do that, the sooner you can just get on to work on yourself, because that's really what it takes, right? What you're going to be working on is going to change. It's not going to be always the same, hopefully, if you're actually evolving.
Well, if you're a slow learner, or if you keep forgetting like I do.
Yeah, or if you're actually not changing, then that may take a little bit longer. But, as you keep doing the work, you really realize we're so complex and so layered, and there's so much to us that can be, looked into and, changed or not, or understood better,
Well, for me, it's like, I like the word you used about evolve, because we have actually, there's another, I'm kind of reading two books simultaneously. One is called, what the heck is it called? It's by Robert Holden. Shift Happens.
Mm-hmm.
And in the beginning, the very first part is this cartoon of two caterpillars looking up into the sky at a butterfly.
Mm-hmm.
And one caterpillar is saying to the other one, "You'll never catch me in that." Okay, I got news for you. Because this is the part that excites me about doing this kind of work, the coaching, and even the stuff on myself is that with each layer, we're evolving into. No idea where it's evolving to. Like, there's no end game, like you're talking about, but it's exciting to see how the view looks so much different, how life starts to look so much different, how you start to be able to. It's more about adjusting than really about navigating, kind of a thing. It's just minor adjustments as you keep going along, right? Like your lighting, right? It's a work in progress. A little adjust. Like, what happened now? Where are you now? Did you move?
I didn't move, but I'm gonna do this.
Yeah. Okay. There we go. Yeah.
Okay. That's better.
New York sunset happening.
Yeah, and that's a ring light. Do you see it?
Yeah, I see the ring. It's not the moon.
It looked a lot bigger on Amazon. Maybe I don't need bigger, actually, because it's blinding me right now. But no, it's true. And, and the other thing is to understand that sometimes evolution doesn't mean that you're not going to have setbacks, or you're not going to react, or you're not going to fall into, being human and reacting and, having negative thoughts. And that doesn't mean that you have started from scratch, or that you haven't, like transformed yourself or evolved. It's just the human condition. There are going to be moments where actually life calls you to be in fight or flight, right?
Mm-hmm.
An
Mm-hmm.
accident happens, things happen where you won't have the time or the opportunity to process things in the most beneficial way to you. But then you'll have those tools after, right? You'll have those tools once you're out of it.
I
And just really not judge that as being a bad thing.
Exactly, and one of the things that just came up at that moment was my whole notion about reacting and responding. I really truly think the universe wants us to respond, because any of the events that were coming up, right? They're just events, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not asking for us to react to them. It's sort of like we're part of it, so let's respond to it in a more meaningful way, in a more I don't know, it's that balance between our intellect and our wisdom. That's where the that's real time response right there. That's real time response, and that's where we grow. So when stuff happens, it's sort of like, yeah, okay, I'll respond. I'm here. I
Yeah,
have everything I need, and if I don't, well, I'll phone a friend.
I'll call you.
I'll call what is it, AA or whatever it is now there.
Triple A.
Triple A. Oh yeah, AA is that other place. That's right.
So, what do you want to say? I wanted to say, what do you think would be fun? I think we'd like to ask people what else they would like to see other than you and I chit chatting. Would they like to
Absolutely.
see,
Yeah,
I
guests.
don't know,
Would you like to?
videos,
Should we bring guests
dancing?
on?
Would
Yeah.
you like to see Rick dance? I would
No.
like to see Rick dance. Let's see how you stay present with that.
I Oh man, it's funny you should, because I was gonna do a live video, and I had this projection in my head. I was thinking, and I would put it was about dancing too, and I put the tripod on, and I'd do this backward sort of dancing along the tracks, and then I'd trip and I'd fall over and disappear out of the camera. It's
Oh
like,
my gosh.
it
Very,
was, but
very
am
elaborate.
I present? No, but yeah, no, it's a fair comment. And I think I'd love to hear what people would love us to talk about more, or if
Mhm.
they have any questions. If we maybe if they know of somebody we could bring on the show that would they would, or if they themselves would love to be part of this, because we talked briefly about having guests on.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. There's a
you
couple
know,
people I would like to have
yeah,
here.
maybe we'll get
Yeah.
um, some author on or something like that, could talk about their book or whatever, and
Oprah.
we can get Oprah. Yeah, yeah. That'll be
It's an
my crazy
inside joke,
show.
everyone. It's an inside joke. Oh,
Yes.
we may get her here, or she may get us there.
Yeah.
That's just more likely.
Hey, you know what? If it all lines up, you never know. You never know. You
You
know.
never know.
No. No. What would you ask Oprah? We only have about a minute, but
Who am I going to be when I meet her? I can't tell you what I would ask her.
no,
I'm
that's
not
true.
there
See, hey,
yet.
oh, very good, very good.
Do
You
you
bring
like
her.
how I dodged that
Yeah,
question?
no, that's good, but it was a great answer, because you bring her in the room
Yeah.
and something will come up, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much, right? Depends on when she shows up. If she shows up today, I may have a very different question than, I don't know,
Yeah.
tomorrow or
Yeah.
in 10 years from now. Who knows?
So
I'm not
Angela put in
attached
the
to it.
comments that she wants to be part of our thing.
Who? I
Angela.
need to learn. Oh, yes, she should. Oh my God, I use the word should.
Oh no.
Oh
Anyways,
no.
nice chatting with you. We have about a couple of 20 seconds or so left, and Same time next week.
Same time, same place, same sunset and lights.
Yeah. And I'll send you the link a little earlier.
That would be great. But it make no difference for me, honestly.
Yeah.
Because when I opened it, it was there and
Oh,
I
really?
needed it.
Just
Yeah,
like that, eh? Oh, that's kind of
just like
well.
that.
That's good to know. Anyways, thank you. Thanks everybody
Thank you,
for
Rick.
joining us today, and thank you, Fati. And you have you have one incredible week. Many blessings to you, and happy Thanksgiving.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I would say happy Thanksgiving to you too, but it's past for you.
It's past. It's in the it's been
It's
there.
in the past for next year.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye bye.